Hi, welcome to our home bar. Welcome to our YouTube channel, Wise Whiskey. I'm Tony, and today I'm doing a Buffalo Trace blind flight. I was lucky enough over the years being a beer rep and liquor rep that I spent a lot of time in stores, happened to see when some bottles made it on the shelf. Later, I made some relationships when I became a spirit distributor specifically and was able to get a few bottles. So we have a pretty good mix here. One day in the future, maybe I'll do a bar tour and show you my little kind of Buffalo Trace whiskey section over there that's away from the main bar. But suffice it to say, I've got 4 great whiskeys in front of me. My wife picked these, so I know that it's from the Buffalo Trace lineup. Other than that, I have no idea what 4 whiskeys are in front of me. So let's see how big of a fool I can make of myself today. As always, when tasting, I've got my Guinness or Guinness NA with me. Today we've got a college football game happening and big championship, so gonna have a regular Guinness. And I already had a little sip of whiskey earlier just to get my palate going and get it ready to go. So let's see how this tasting goes. On the first one, definitely a little bit of cherry, and there is some oak there. Almost like a clay type thing as well, which I think is just a weird kind of earthy note I'm getting from some barrel tannin. A little on the dry side. I'm guessing this is one of the older whiskeys that I have up there because I know a lot of the Buffalo Trace lineup is pretty fruit and sweet forward. This is definitely a little muted on that end. Maybe just a little bit more mature smelling. Let's go in for our first sip. I don't know about that. That is, everything is up front, towards the front of my tongue and my palate. Not overly sweet. Not a ton of proof. Or if it is proofy, it's sneaky proof. Because I am getting a little bit of a Kentucky hug, that warmth here in the chest now. I really didn't get it on the palate. Let me take a second sip. Balanced, sweet, not overly aged now that I drink it, I don't believe. Not overly proofy. If I had to guess, I'd say that's like maybe a Elmer T. Lee, Rock Hill Farms, or an E.H. Taylor. One of those kind of 100 proof, middle of the pack as far as age and proof for the Buffalo Trace lineup. It's a really nice sip though. Very pleasant. Not overly complex. Number 2. Definitely more like cherry, more fruit. A little bit of vanilla. Maybe a little creamy, like a little bit of buttercream. Not a ton of oak or tannin on this, on the nose at least. Again, not a lot of proof coming on that. Honestly, not a ton of flavor coming on that one. That one is very subdued, very mild. I'm kind of at a loss for which one that could be. I'm going to maybe say the first one was Rock Hill and the second one was Elmer T. Lee is what I'm thinking so far. Saved a little bit of each of these so I could go back to them and go in a different order. Not feeling super confident so far. Already totally at a loss. A lot more going on the nose here. Here's some spice, some oak. A little bit of brown sugar. Definitely smells like there's a little more proof here. Okay, definitely a little more going on with that one. There's some proof that's sticking around, some spice. It is sweet. It is rich. Got a little bit of burn. that's hanging out at the very back of my palate, almost like the back of my mouth, on the back of my throat. I'm not getting hardly any oak in that. I'm wondering if maybe that's Stag Junior. There's just definitely some proof there and some rich sweetness. There is an alcohol burn that lingers, and by far the highest proof I think I've had so far today. But I'm not getting a ton of age and complexity to that. I do also have a Blanton straight from the barrel over there. And I could see this being that or the Stag. There's proof and there's sweetness, but it's not overly rounded with like maturity and age. I will say it's hot and it has some burn, but I wouldn't say it's unpleasant. It just kind of hangs out with you, this kind of low-level burn along the very bottom of your palate and at the back of your throat. Let's try number 4. Very rich on the nose. A little buttery. Some cherry, some fruit. Okay. That is by far the richest mouthfeel. It's viscous, like coats your palate. It evolves while you're sipping it. You're getting different experiences completely throughout your palate as it goes. It may go past your palate and then come back to the front with some notes. It's very sweet. It's rich. It is oaky. It by far tastes the most mature. Ooh, there's definitely a Kentucky hug going on there and some warmth that's lingering. But again, I wouldn't say it's unpleasant heat. There's a little bit of that tickle in the back of your throat, almost like you had some hot pepper, that I don't love with high proof whiskeys. But this is not to the point of being like uncomfortable. It's just there reminding you right now. I would say this is the George T. Stag. It's the one BTAC bottle that I have. BTAC stands for Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. They do a handful of releases every year. Thomas Handy Sazerac, William LaRue Weller, Eagle Rare 17, and the Sazerac 17, I think, and then the George T. Stag. I believe this is the 2024 release, and I want to say it was almost 15 years old. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to kind of oscillate between and do them in a little different order. So I'm going to go back to number 3 now. Again, I'm getting some burn similar to number 4, where I think I'm at a higher proof. There's some cherry. There's some kind of generic sweetness. It is a little rich, but it does not evolve on the palate. It does not provide the complexity that number 4 does. So I'm going to guess that number 3 is the Blanton straight from the barrel. You're getting some of those sweet, classic Buffalo Trace Blanton's notes, but that proof definitely still comes in there. Most importantly, you're just not getting a ton of age and a ton of barrel character. Now to number 1. This does have a touch of spice to it, which is making me think it's one of the high rise. It is slightly savory and sweet. It does not have a whole lot of finish. It doesn't have a lot of burn. I'm going to stick with it and say this is the Rock Hill Farms. I do think that this is around that 100 proof. Just a little bit of sweetness and richness to it. It's a nice, lovely pour, but just not a whole lot going on with it. Now back to number 2. See, now number 2 is coming across as sweeter and a little bit more going on than number 1. A little more spice, a little more barrel. Still not a lot of proof. Yeah. You know, I'm maybe getting some citrus on it this time, which would normally be from the Weller lineup. So I'm wondering if that might be Weller 12. I don't know. Normally Weller 12 is sweeter and lighter than that. I don't think it's 107. I don't think it has enough proof. I don't know. That's a tough one. I am at a loss for that one. Because I picked up some citrus notes this time and I don't typically, I'm going to guess that this was Weller 12 year. And then back to number 4. Yeah, I mean, definitely oakier this time around. And proofy. This has got to be the George T. Stagg. I will say, out of the sips that I had, number 2 is probably my most enjoyable today. It was light, easy drinking. When I went back to it, it did have a little more character. Part of tasting is learning the difference in objective and subjective. So is something objectively more complex or objectively good or objectively older, things like that? Or subjective, do I like it better? The most interesting whiskey in this lineup, without a doubt, is number 4. But interesting doesn't always mean good. The burn is still just enough there that it's not something I would want all the time. When I do get a sip of it that goes more in the rich fruit and the sweetness, it's really enjoyable. When I get a sip like this time around where that barrel character and that tannin and oak comes through, that's not really my cup of tea. So I will say that in prior tastings when I had the George T. Stagg, which I'm positive this is that. If it's not, I'm going to look really foolish. The George T. Stagg in prior tastings has been stronger to me where it's more oaky and more hot. And this is by far the most enjoyable it's been when I'm trying it. So I do like it a little more than I did in the past. But I've been lucky enough to try some really heavily aged, really high-end, high-proof bourbons that people freak out over. And I understand from an objective standpoint why. I understand the complexity and the intricacies and the nuance. Excuse me. I get the craftsmanship and the time that goes into that and the limited amount of those whiskeys that exist. So I understand why they're held up the way they are. But it's not my desert island whiskey. It's, you know, it's maybe the coolest bottle I have on my shelf because people are like, whoa, I've never seen that before, and they want a sip of it. But it's not a bottle that I find myself going back to and be like, man, I wish, you know, I'm going to kill this bottle and it kills me because I'm not going to be able to get another one. That bottle's still pretty full. It's just not something I go back to often. I love sharing it with folks and getting to experience with them in the social aspect of it, but it's just not my favorite pour. I think number 2 and number 1, honestly, were my 2 favorites just because the proof level wasn't super high and they were nice and sweet and approachable. I would drink number 4 over number 3. I might say number 4 and number 1 were tied and that number 3 was in last place. But yeah, I really do still lean towards more approachable, easy drinking whiskeys. So those are my guesses and those are my thoughts on this blind. I am probably wrong on these 3, if not all 4. I don't trust my instincts very much on these blinds. They tend to make me look like a fool. But let's go, Amy. What's number 1?
Number 1 is Elmer T. Lee.
Elmer T. So I said I thought this was Rockhill, Elmer, or E.H. Taylor, and I bounced back and forth. So this is Elmer T. Lee. Okay, so what's number 2?
Rockhill Farms.
Okay, so I ended up a little switched on I think the first time I went through, I had those right. And the second time I switched them, I think is how that went. But Rockhill Farms, I will tell you, man, Rockhill Farms is not a bottle that is overly complex. It is not going to blow you away. But my goodness, it is just really sweet, delicious whiskey. And it is a bourbon that if it was easier to find and wasn't crazy marked up all the time, I would actually recommend as a gateway bourbon. But because it's so difficult to find and because people are still trying to mark up prices 2 to 3 times or more, it's the only reason I don't put on that list. But it is a great bourbon. And also, just to go back to Elmer T. Lee, real quick, just one of those bourbon things that I love. Elmer T. Lee was the master distiller that created the Blanton's brand. So he created single barrel bourbon and really helped with the craft boom in a lot of ways, the allocated boom that happened that made bourbon what it is. And yet when they asked Elmer T. Lee how he liked his whiskey, he is on video saying that he drank his whiskey with a little bit of 7-Up. I believe it was 7-Up. It might have been Mountain Dew. I just love that. I love that bourbon nerds freak out and get so pretentious about things. And the guy that created the brand that really led to all that drank his with a little bit of 7-Up with it. Okay, number 3.
George T. Nope. Weller Antique, actually.
Weller Antique. Okay, wow, that's Weller Antique, number 3. Man, it drank really hot this go around. That is surprising to me. I was sure this was Stagg Jr. or Blanton straight from the barrel just because there was so much proof coming through. I will tell you, I've had this bottle of Weller Antique for a while, and I am not crazy about it. I haven't tried enough Weller Antique to just, is it a batch thing? But this Weller Antique has never tasted that well for me. Wow, but I would not have man, it drinks, it's a hot bottle. So number 4 is? George T. Stagg. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's a little unfair putting something like George T. Stagg in a flight, frankly, because it is just so much bigger. Other than the Blanton straight from the barrel and the Stagg Jr., I don't have a lot that are that high proof and that bold. But, you know, it is such a unique bottle. And like I said, an interesting sip, an enjoyable sip to talk about and to share with folks, but still just not the kind of whiskey that I want to sit with when I'm trying to enjoy myself and just have a nice dram. So, I don't feel terrible about that blind. I did pretty well overall. The Weller Antique is still surprising me. I'm going to have to go spend some more time with that bottle. I can't believe that drank as hot as it did. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you start doing some blind tastings of your own if you can. It's a great way to strip away bias and to just really humble yourself. If you like this, if you've had any of these whiskeys or any of the other Buffalo Trace lineup, let us know what your favorite Buffalo Trace whiskeys are, or your favorite allocated whiskeys are. Would love that in the comments. If you want to support the channel, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's the best way you can help us out. As always, please drink responsibly. Trees drink respectfully. I believe I said trees there instead of please. So we'll try it out one more time. As always, please drink responsibly. Please drink respectfully. And most important of all, have fun doing it. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day. Cheers.